Welcome back, everyone, to Chakra Healing Coaching. My name is JR, pronouns he, him, and his, and I'm a chakra coach. And I have an amazing guest on the show for you today. I got to meet Rachel just a couple of years ago at a retreat for holistic nurse coaches, and we just clicked right away. So I'm going to introduce Rachel here. She's a registered nurse, board certified holistic coach on a mission to support clients through their healing journey through the power of creativity. That's freaking awesome. In 2022, she gave her life to Heal the Right Way, an interactive workshop geared to helping people discover their voice and become skilled storytellers. She coaches clients in both a group and individual settings, helping them heal from their past, create confidence in their lives, and express themselves authentically. So, Rachel, tell us about you.
Yeah, thank you so much, JR, for having me on. I'm really excited to be here and to talk a little bit about myself and what I do. So, as you mentioned in the intro, I am a registered nurse. I worked a traditional nursing bedside job for about 10 years. I worked on an orthopedic unit, loved certain aspects of it and didn't love other aspects of it so much. And then about 3 years ago, I pivoted and I kind of took a whole new career path. And I became board certified as a holistic nurse coach. And when I first started my journey and I was setting up my practice and I was going through all the steps that they teach you in coaching school, how to create a practice, everybody talks about finding a niche, about finding who is that client that you serve. And I remember giving this a lot of thought and doing a lot of exercises around niche and trying to figure out who I wanted to serve. And through a series of different events and stories, I kind of realized that the client that I want to serve is that person that wants to express myself. And we like to say very often your niche is a former version of yourself or something that you personally went through. And so this has been a lot of my own story, is figuring out what is it that I want to say? What is my message? I know I want to express myself. And just figuring out how to do that has always been something that I have, wanted to get better at. And so my coaching practice ended up coalescing around this concept of creativity, self-expression, and writing. And my coaching practice really revolves around figuring out how to authentically express yourself, right? A lot of people say, oh, I have a message. I have something I want to share with the world. But if you dig just a little bit deeper, we don't always know what that message is or why we want to share it or what it is that's holding us back. And so I really guide people to getting their ideas from in here out into the world, out into reality, and creating, expressing a more authentic version of themselves. And really just, it's more than just sharing your message. It's more than just being creative. It's about shifting into a different way of moving through the world where you are aligned, where you're excited about what you have to do, where you're not, showing up to a job every day that you hate and just pretending and putting on a face. It's really just about being aligned and living authentically and just expressing yourself, because I really believe that is what we were all born to do.
100% yes. And I love that, because I tell clients all the time that we're all creative in some way, right? It's just we
100%.
lose it along the way, and I love that you're fostering that to pull that out of individuals. I think that is so awesome. So
Yes.
if someone is looking for a way to express themselves, within that realm, of trying to get it out of their head, out to the world and everything, how would you go about that with them?
Yeah, so I pretty much start in the same place with everyone. And what I like to say to people is the first step to expressing yourself to the world is expressing yourself to yourself. So very often that's a step that we skip, right? We think about being on a TED Talk stage, or we think about whatever that dream is, right? It could be writing a book. It could be even just being more expressive in conversations and relationships. And we very often are thinking about the other person, but we have to start with ourselves, right? Do we know ourselves? Do we know who we are? Do we know what we believe? Do we know what we stand for? And that is where it needs to start. And so I always start with all my clients with sit down and write. It sounds very simple, but it's very, very profound, and it really creates these huge shifts in your life. So the method that I teach is mostly adapted from The Artist's Way, which is an amazing book by Julia Cameron that has shifted and changed my life. Most of my practice revolves around this book. But in that book, she talks about something called morning pages. And morning pages basically means sitting down every single day and writing for 3 pages. Now, I like to say you get to make it your own. Doesn't have to be every single day. Doesn't have to be 3 pages. She wants you to do it longhand. She wants you to do it in the morning. Adapt it and make it your own. But get into this habit of sitting down and writing and just holding up a mirror to those thoughts that live inside your head, right? Most of us walk around with, I can't remember what the statistic is, but I think 80% of our thoughts are the same every day. So we have these repetitive thoughts, and a lot of them are negative, right? A lot of them are, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, and I got my to-do list and I did this wrong, and just mulling over things. And when you sit down and you make it 3 dimensions, you put it into the real world, you put it onto a piece of paper and you have that reflected back to you, amazing shifts start to happen, right? You start to get to know yourself. You start to realize, oh, those thoughts are negative. Not that you have to do anything about it or shift anything, but it's just that noticing, that awareness of what's living inside your head. And very often what starts to rise to the surface is, what do I stand for? What's my story? Who am I? What is this message that I want to share with the world? And so this habit of just kind of sitting down every single day and facing your thoughts in some sort of capacity starts to create these really big ripple effects, these really big shifts and changes, where you start to have a better understanding of who you are, what you stand for, and how to express yourself in the world. And everything starts to kind of evolve naturally from there.
Wow. That sounds very powerful. And, I've noticed that people are just afraid to really face themselves.
100%. 100%. And for good reason. I mean, I'm not going to lie. When I started doing morning pages in the beginning, and this is a phase that a lot of people go through. In the beginning, it's really exciting. It's really fun. And then very often we hit a block where maybe we come across something that we didn't want to know, or we start to get to know ourselves in a certain way, and we're like, ooh. And then very often that's where people start to fall off and they stop doing the morning pages, which is why I believe in doing it in a group or doing it with a coach or having someone support you along the process, because you very often come up to this place where it's like, did I want to know that? Maybe not, And so, yeah, that's all part of the journey, all part of the process.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about maybe an interesting fact, something fun that you like to do, maybe a hobby. Just tell the audience, how they can relate to you a little bit more.
Yeah. So, okay. I have a lot of hobbies, many, maybe too many, but I love to move my body. So I love yoga. I've been doing yoga for 6+ years. It's the staple. It's something that, something that just connects me with myself and helps me just kind of heal and move my body and sweat. I love yoga. I also am an avid downhill skier. So I am one of 7 children. I grew up in Toronto. A lot of people in Toronto ski, but I grew up in an ultra-Orthodox Jewish family where it wasn't necessarily typical to ski, but my dad loved skiing. My dad is a ski instructor, and so he taught all 7 of us to ski. And I like to joke that my parents threw us on skis before we could walk. And so skiing is my happy place. I love being on top of a mountain with the sun, the snow, the cold air, and the speed. I love the speed of going down a mountain. So those are some things I love to do. In recent years, especially since I've gone on this creative recovery journey and diving into the artist's way, I'm really trying to immerse myself back in the arts. So as a kid, I was very artistic. I was very creative. And then I think I don't know exactly what the turning point was, but there was some point where I kind of was like, okay, got to get serious. I'm a mom, I'm a nurse, I'm all these things, and these come first. And then those creative pursuits kind of fell to the wayside. So I'm really trying to incorporate that back into my life. I love to doodle. I love to sketch. I love to paint with the kids. And yeah, I'm trying to bring more of that into my life. And I definitely notice a lot of resistance to play sometimes. So that's something that I've been working on.
So that brings up an interesting topic, if you want to say. I know that even in my sessions, but more individually and studying it, that's by about first grade, most individuals start losing that creativity. And then for some of them, they keep on going, but a lot of them lose it because we start getting to that logic state where you have to stay in the lines. You have to color, a grass has to be green. It can't be yellow or whatnot. And you kind of lose that creativity. So it kind of, in my perspective is it damages the energy centers and the chakras, and that can have long effects. So, how would you go about somebody that comes to you and they want to change, but yet they're afraid they don't have that creative spark, is what they tell you?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh my God. So a few things. So first of all, I just want to like reflect on what you said about how children lose their creativity. It is
Yeah.
so real. I read a study recently that just kind of blew my mind. I think this was like a NASA study, and they created this survey to assess creativity. Like, how creative are you? And, there was kind of like this rating. And I think like in very small children, like 4 or 5 years old, like 98% of them ranked highly creative,
Yeah.
like the maximum. And then by the time they were like 10 years old, it had gone down to like 70%. And by the time they were like 15, it had down to 30%. And then by the time they reached like adulthood, it was like 2% of them were highly creative. But which is kind of like depressing when you hear those numbers. But the encouraging piece, I think, of that study was that what they did find was that at any age, your ranking can shift. Even if you're part of that 98% of adults that is not highly creative and is living, very much in boxes and, more fixed mindset, at any age, you can shift that and you can grow in your creativity. So there's always room for healing and becoming more creative, which was one of the big things that I learned when I stepped into this journey, when I opened the Artist's Way, when I learned about creative recovery, is that becoming creative, we think of it as like this nebulous sort of, some people are creative and some people are not, and creativity is kind of hard to define, and what is creativity anyway? But the reality is that creativity, becoming more creative, is like there's actually a process. Like there are actual like tangible ways to become more creative, right? And we know that like employers, the number one thing that they're looking for is creativity. Can you think outside the box? Especially now with like, AI seems to be taking over everywhere we look, and it's like, well, what do we need humans for anyway, right? And like that is what is human about us, is our ability to be creative, right? To be almost like our creator, like to be creative, like to create things, to make new constructs, make new realities, make new worlds. And so becoming more creative is 100% something that you can learn. And so what I would tell people is to have fun. Like this is something that comes up a lot with a lot of my coaching clients. A lot of my coaching clients are nurses, are people in the helping professions. And a lot of them, I noticed this sort of pattern, like, which was my own pattern in life, which is like, we kind of put that creativity aside. Like we reach a certain age and we're like, oh, I'm an adult now. Like no more space for play, no more space for fun. But it's like play is like a basic human need. Like we need to play. Like we will shrivel up and die. And so Julia Cameron, in her book, she talks about the morning pages, which I already talked about. But the other thing she talks about is what's called an artist date. So she talks about it kind of like her concept of creativity is kind of like a radio transmitter and a radio receiver. So when we do the morning pages, it's like we're putting up the transmitter. We're like, okay, I'm ready to receive. I'm here. The radio is like sending out signals. I'm clearing all these thoughts that are in my head. I'm making room for new ideas. But then we need like new, cool, creative ideas to come in. So that's when we're ready for the receiver portion of the radio. And so to get that creativity, we have to go out and find it. So she talks about going once a week on an artist date. This is just time, sacred time, alone with yourself, doing something fun, doing something mindless, doing something without a purpose. And it really could look like anything. Again, I have to like break it down for a lot of my clients because interestingly enough, people have some resistance to the morning pages. But most people are like, okay, you're giving me something else to do. I'll add this onto my self-care. But when I tell people to go on the artist date, they experience so much resistance. They're like, what do you mean? You want me to like walk around like Home Goods and just like smell the candles? It's like, it makes them so uncomfortable. And I relate to this because this has been my own journey, but really making it small. If it feels overwhelming, if it feels like too much, like what's the smallest thing you could do to just be alone with yourself, to give yourself a little bit of space? It could be 15 minutes sitting in your backyard, smelling the flowers. One of my favorite artist dates is to go to a store called World Market, which is kind of like a Home Goods kind of store, but it's like, It's a little different. And I love that store. And like, I go in there and I tell myself, you don't have to buy anything. You don't have to do anything. You're here to just take in the fabrics, take in the colors, take in the sights. So it could be something really small like that, or it could be like, clearing a whole day and going to an immersive spa or doing something out of your comfort zone, doing something unusual, really playing, go to a museum in your town that you've never visited, things like that. And so the artist date is a really magical way to start to infuse that creativity back into your life, to start to feel like a kid again, to learn how to play, to learn how to be. And it's super, super powerful, super powerful.
Wow. And I'm a little jealous because we don't have a world market around where I live now. It's
Yeah,
like
Home
about
Goods is okay. Home
2 hours
Goods is a
away.
good second. Uh,
Yeah, ours is 2 hours away. So, but I love that place.
yeah, yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
I
Me
could see
too.
how those creative like sparks could happen there. Just not expecting anything, just going and looking at all the pieces and even the food from around the world.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like it's coming all together for us just to experience. So that's really cool. I love that example. Okay, so tell us a little bit about maybe some current projects you're working on, maybe some future ones. What is it that like? What is your goal?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll start at the top. My BHAG, which stands for my big, hairy, audacious goal, the vision that I have up on my wall that I think about when I'm falling asleep is
Hmm.
to inspire 1 million people to tell their story. That is the big dream, the big vision. I really believe in the power of storytelling to heal, the power of storytelling to create a different reality for ourselves, right? Like, if you think of life as like a choose your own adventure, like we actually get to choose. And not only do we get to choose the future, we get to choose, which page do I want to go to next? Do I want to go down the tunnel or do I want to go over the bridge? Like we have in a choose your own adventure. We actually even retroactively get to change the story. We, by writing, by facing our own story, by doing stream of consciousness journaling and personal development work, we get to look back at our lives and choose the story that we want to choose. And the reason I say that is because all my grandparents are Holocaust survivors. And I think a lot about their stories. I think a lot about what they went through. I think a lot about their trauma. And one of the things that I used to think about a lot, or I think about a lot, is how did they go through those traumas and manage to live pretty functional, normal, fulfilling lives? And I
Hmm.
think storytelling was a huge piece of it, because when they told us their stories, when they shared their stories with their grandkids, they got to choose how to frame those stories, right? They got to choose if they wanted to be the victim in the story or if they wanted to be a survivor. And whenever they would share their stories with me, there was never like, anger or bitterness or victimhood mentality. It was always about, look, we triumphed, we overcame these things, we survived, we held on to our values. And it just was a very empowering way to frame their story. And
Hmm.
so my big vision is, and you don't have to be like a Holocaust survivor for this to resonate. This is everyone has a story, everyone has a journey, whatever it is that we've been through. And we all get to choose how to tell that story. We all get to choose how to reflect back on our lives. And so my big vision is to inspire people to tell their story. And so I have a group coaching program where we work on that. It's a 4-month program. It's called Heal the Right Way. Right as in like writing. And this program walks you through how to become a more expressed, authentic, confident, articulate human being who's able to walk through life and share their story. To move from a place of, victimhood, frustration, feeling like life is happening to you, into a place of, I get to choose my life. I get to choose how things look. I get to write my own story.
Yeah.
And so that's the big vision. I have this group program, and then a little fun project that I've been working on that I'm going to share is, I'm not really doing this relating to my coaching practice. This is just something that I'm kind of doing for fun, although it ties into all this work that I do. Is I'm starting to dive into my own family history. So I've been reaching out to cousins, I've been reaching out to siblings, aunts, uncles, and asking them if they'd be willing to do interviews with me and just share their memories of my grandparents. And so I've been doing this project. I had so much resistance to doing it, also because I was like, well, what's the purpose? What's the end goal? Are we making a book? Like, what's going to happen? And I finally had to just like let go of all of this and be like, Rachel, it's just a project. It's just something you're doing for fun. And these interviews have been really, really interesting. It's really, really cool to me, like, to think about my grandparents and hear stories about them through other people's lens, right? I have a certain lens that I see my grandparents through. I have certain memories that I remember of them. but it's almost like I feel like I'm building like a puzzle of my own life, because like these are the people that, helped raise me and I come from, and this is my family history, and really just learning more about myself and where I come from and who these people are, and just getting to know them in a more, they're no longer in this world, but I feel like this is a way of keeping them alive and keeping their memory alive. And so I've been doing these interviews, I've been collecting like pictures and mementos, and it's been really, really, really fun and fulfilling. So those are some of the things that I have going on. I have a whole bunch of other like little things in my business. I run a book club. I have free writing spaces for people that want to write but just have trouble getting their butt in the chair. This is just a Zoom call. We get together and we write together. Really simple but really powerful, and a whole bunch of other little fun things going on. But those are the big things that I'm excited about right now.
Mm-hmm. You know, you kept on saying storytelling. That's kind of your passion, and I could see that with you gathering these other stories from your family. And two things. One, I think it's very unique that we can experience the same event at the same time, but our perspectives different. So putting those puzzle pieces together is pretty a healing factor for not only the person that's been there, but the other person to share those ideas and get to live that moment and figure out how to move through it if you have to, or you could take a moment and just reminisce in it. So it's interesting on that fact.
Totally.
But going to storytelling, it's a major art, that I don't think we in America really understand as much anymore, because it was a big thing like in other cultures, like Native Americans, and passing down that story to the next generation that passes to the next generation, and how impactful that it was, and taking back that power, of learning how to be storytellers ourselves. That's a game changer.
Yes. Yes, on so many levels. I love what you said about Native American cultures, because I read somewhere recently and this just blew my mind. I can't remember which indigenous culture it was, but there was an indigenous culture where when people get sick, they would ask them, when did you last tell your story? And so they literally viewed it through the lens of like, telling your story has healing powers. And if you don't tell your story and you keep that bottled up inside, you actually physically get ill. And I just was like, that was just like so powerful. It's just such a powerful way to see it. Yeah. And in Western culture, we've lost that. That. It's like storytelling, sitting around a fire, sharing. Like this is like such a basic human experience that we just don't get to experience on a day-to-day basis in Western culture. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. So how do you or how do you see storytelling moving in the future?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think about storytelling a lot. I mean, I'm a shameless like TV addict. I love a good TV show. I love a good movie. I love a good book. And I think there's so many different ways we can infuse storytelling into our lives, right? Like there's like the big stories, right? Those epic stories that we see on screen or become best-selling books. But then there's like the little stories. And I think that's what draws me, like the little everyday day-to-day moments. Like part of what got me into storytelling, into writing, was throughout my years of bedside nursing, I experienced so many crazy stories, but little moments, yeah, holding a patient's hand at the end of life, or supporting a family, or a crazy doctor. Like I would just experience like these really, really interesting moments. And I noticed similar things, people around me, like a lot of nurses and medical professionals have like these really interesting stories that are just not told. And I was on a plane about 5 years ago, and I was with my family, and this was before I became a coach. I was working hard as a nurse. I had 3 small children, and the plane was about an hour from landing in Toronto, where my family lives, and we were going to visit. And they suddenly asked for like help from a medical professional. Are there any medical professionals on the flight that can help a passenger? I'm like, okay. I ended up getting up to help this gentleman who the flight attendant had banged his knee as she was going down the aisle, and he was making like a whole big thing out of it. Something smelled like very fishy, very weird. I went to help him. I told him to put some ice on it. As I'm heading towards the back of the plane, my pathway was blocked by this woman who looked like very distressed, very upset. And she said, "What's going on? Oh my God, what happened?" And in my attempt to calm her down, I said, "Somebody was just being a little melodramatic. Don't worry, everything's okay." And she started yelling at me. She said, "You are so unprofessional. How dare you? That's my son you're talking about." And I was like,
Oh,
whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, I was not expecting things to escalate. And I kind of said, I left my husband at the back of the plane with 3 small children, so I could go help a stranger, and I would appreciate it if you'd let me get back to them. So
mm,
she finally got out of my way, but I was kind of shooken up. And by the time I got to the back of the plane, another nurse had gotten up after me, and she saw how shooken up I was. And she said, "Rachel, what happened?" Or she didn't know my name yet. She said, "What happened?" And I told her what happened. And she said to me, "You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong." And she started reassuring me. And then she said, "I don't know if you know who I am, but my name is Tilda Shaloff. I've written a bunch of best-selling books. I'm a nurse and I'm an author. And I've written the story of my life." And I was just like, whoa. And then she said, if anyone comes your way, you send them to me. Like, I got your back. Like, I'm very well known in the nursing world. So we ended up striking up a friendship. And over the years, she would always tell me, "Rachel, write your story, write your story, write your story." And she would encourage me to write. And she was
mhm.
somebody that really inspired me. She was a nurse. She took her gifts. She wrote this best-selling book. It's called A Nurse's Story. It's a very famous book. And she shared her stories with the world. And I thought, wow, that's amazing, because she's just like an ordinary person, right? Like, we think of oh, you have to be Nelson Mandela or something to
Yeah.
write a book. And it's like, no, she was just a nurse working in an ICU in a major hospital in Toronto. And she came across some really beautiful, poignant, funny, heartbreaking stories. And she took her stories and she shared them with the world. And it was that simple. And so I think she's a big inspiration for me. She's still a mentor of mine, but I think this idea of we all have a story to tell, right? And sometimes we think that our story is not valuable enough, or it's not interesting enough, or it's not big enough.
Mhm.
But so many people are curious. What does it look like to be a nurse? What does it look like to talk to a family and tell them that their loved one, is about to leave the world? Like, what does that look like? What does that feel like? What are the little day-to-day details of being a nurse? People are really interested in that. People really want to know. And so I think my mission is to help anyone tell their story, even people who think that their story is not interesting enough or not exciting enough. Even if your story never gets published, right? Like, really to let go of that end goal and really be able to focus on the process. Like, the process of telling your story itself
Yeah.
is where the power lies, is where the healing is where the fun is, right? And being able to focus on that process is really what I love to do. And so, I want to inspire anyone who has that nudge, who has that inner voice, who wants to tell their story. Like, I want to tell you, tell your story, and start by telling your story to yourself. Just start by
Mhm.
picking up a pen and writing and seeing what comes out, seeing what you have locked inside of you. So, yeah.
Wow. Wow. When you're saying that, it's the process, that's the fun. Just the word that came to me is that's when the magic happens. Writing it down, going through that
Yeah.
process of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we
100%.
are coming to just about the end of our time together. So tell the audience how to get a hold of you. Of course, I'll have it displayed below the screen so that you can see, but tell us what the best way is to get in touch with you if they want to explore that and learn the power of storytelling and being more creative in their life.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. So the best place to get a hold of me is Facebook. That is where I am most active. On Facebook, I am Rachel Dick Plonka. I also run a Facebook group for nurses that are interested in writing. It's called Nurses Who Write. You can also find me on Instagram at Nurse Coach Rachel, LinkedIn, Twitter, all the places. And then my next group program is going to be launching in September. So if you're curious about that program, if you want to hear more, if you want to jump in, spots are very, very limited. This is going to be the 7th season of this course. So I'm super, super excited to see what happens.
Yeah.
So if you're interested, reach out, and we launch in September.
Sweet. Well, thank you all for watching. If you have any comments, please post them below. I'll make sure that Rachel gets to them if she doesn't see them for whatever reason. But we want to make sure that I can help connect you if that is what you're needing. If you have any questions, just let us know. And I guess that'll be it for today's episode. So, how would you like to sign off to the audience, Rachel?
Thank you for listening, and keep writing. And thanks, JR, for having me on.
It's been a pleasure. I love connecting with other holistically minded people and the unique things that they're doing to improve the world. That's what we're doing. We're improving the world globally by making one difference with one life at a time.